At 6:44 on a December morning, Bryan Thompson, a 50-year-old father and chief executive officer of United Healthcare, was shot from behind on a midtown Manhattan sidewalk. He never had a chance to turn around. When investigators recovered the shell casings, they found words engraved into the brass: deny, defend, depose. 5 days later, police arrested Luigi Mangione. What the documented record shows, and what it doesn't, begins with what was left at that scene. Investigators logged every object left behind on the sidewalk outside the hotel. 3 shell casings, each from a 9mm round, were found at the spot where Bryan Thompson fell. According to police records, these casings were not ordinary. They carried the words deny, defend, and depose, each word engraved into the brass. Law enforcement officials later told CNBC and Healthcare Finance News that these markings echoed language familiar in the insurance industry. But the choice of words and their deliberate placement on the casings raised questions for detectives from the start. Prosecutors would later argue in court filings that this was not random, but a calculated message left at the scene. The search for evidence did not stop at the sidewalk. NYPD confirmed that a black backpack was later recovered in Central Park, several blocks away. Inside, police records show, were items that stood out: a stack of Monopoly money, a water bottle, and a protein bar wrapper. Investigators collected the water bottle and wrapper for fingerprint analysis, anticipating that any trace could help identify who handled them. Each item was sealed and logged into the chain of custody, forming the beginning of a physical record that prosecutors would rely on as they built their case. The presence of these objects and the words engraved on the casings would come to define the early narrative, one shaped by evidence, not certainty. The NYPD released surveillance images of the suspect within hours of the Midtown shooting, distributing them through national law enforcement channels and public alerts. Over the next 5 days, these images circulated widely, driving a search that crossed state lines. According to Altoona Police Department records, the breakthrough came on December 9, 2024. A McDonald's employee in Altoona, Pennsylvania recognized a customer from the NYPD images and quietly called 911. Responding officers approached the man as he sat alone. When asked for his name, he replied, "Mark Rosario," and produced an identification card in that name. Police records state that he then hesitated, corrected himself, and gave his real name, Luigi Mangione, before invoking his right to remain silent. Officers later testified that his hands were visibly shaking when they mentioned New York, and that his demeanor shifted from quiet to tense as the conversation continued. During a search of his backpack, Altoona police recovered a black 3D printed pistol, a suppressor, and a loaded magazine. The weapon matched the description released by the NYPD days earlier. Investigators also found several fraudulent IDs, including the one bearing the name Mark Rosario, as well as a United States passport, a large sum of cash, and a mask similar to the one seen in surveillance footage from Manhattan. Among the personal items, police logged Monopoly money, a water bottle, and a candy wrapper, objects that would later be forensically linked to the crime scene in New York. According to court filings, subsequent laboratory analysis connected Mangione's fingerprints to the water bottle and wrapper, and ballistics experts later matched the seized pistol to the shell casings collected outside the hotel. The 5-day manhunt concluded with Mangione in custody, his arrest captured in Altoona police body camera footage. Prosecutors alleged that the chain of evidence formed in those moments would become central to the case against him. Throughout, Mangione has maintained his plea of not guilty. The red spiral notebook, entered into evidence after its recovery from a backpack in Central Park, stands at the center of the prosecution's case against Luigi Mangione. Court filings describe it not only as a diary, but as a manifesto, pages filled with expressions of anger toward corporate America and the healthcare industry. Prosecutors allege that these writings document months of planning before the shooting of Bryan Thompson, with passages that move from broad statements of grievance to detailed notes about the intended act. One entry, dated August 15, 2024, is quoted in the official filing. "I finally feel confident about what I will do. The details are coming together, and I don't feel any doubt about whether it's right or justified." Prosecutors point to this as a turning point, arguing that it marks the moment when intent hardened into resolve. The same notebook contains a 3-page document labeled as a manifesto, in which the author condemns the healthcare industry for, in his words, extracting human life force for money. The tone, as described in the district attorney's summary, is one of deep hostility, with repeated references to the suffering of patients and the perceived indifference of executives. A later entry from October 2024 features a brief notation, 1.5 months, which prosecutors interpret as a countdown from the August decision point to the date of the shooting. The notebook also includes a list of possible public reactions, a sketched timeline, and references to the logistics of targeting Thompson at the investor conference. According to the prosecution's court filing, these materials together form a narrative of planning and intent, months in the making. Forensic handwriting analysts retained by the state have testified that the writing matches known samples from Mangione. The defense, in its response, has challenged the interpretation of certain passages and the admissibility of the notebook itself, but the court has so far ruled that the material may be presented at trial. Throughout, Mangione is described only as the author of the notebook. He has pleaded not guilty, and no court has rendered a verdict on the meaning or truth of these writings. The evidence, as it stands, is a record of what prosecutors allege was months of preparation, not a final judgment. Luigi Mangione's early life is documented in the records of one of Baltimore's most prominent families. His grandfather, Nicholas Mangione, built a business empire in nursing homes and real estate. Relatives include a current Maryland state delegate and figures in local radio. At Gilman School, Mangione graduated as valedictorian in 2016. The school's commencement video shows him delivering a speech about discipline and thought. He went on to the University of Pennsylvania, earning both a bachelor's and a master's in computer and information science by 2020. While at Penn, he co-founded a student game development club, reflecting an early interest in technology and collaboration. After graduation, Mangione worked as a software engineer for TrueCar, focusing on data automation. In 2023, he joined a co-living community in Honolulu, Hawaii, where he lived among digital nomads and participated in book discussions. Investigators later identified a Goodreads account in his name that reviewed Ted Kaczynski's Industrial Society and its future, with a note about the dangers of unchecked technology. The same account listed works by Vonnegut and Orwell. Medical records and social media posts confirm that Mangione suffered from chronic lower back pain due to spondylolisthesis. In July 2023, he underwent L5-1 spinal fusion surgery, and an X-ray he posted online showed the surgical hardware. According to acquaintances, he withdrew from public life after the operation, with friends reporting that he stopped responding to messages and rarely appeared in group activities. Prosecutors later cited this period of silence as the beginning of the timeline leading to the writings entered into evidence. The record documents a progression from academic achievement and professional promise to isolation and private grievance, but it offers no clear answers about what led to the events now before the court. The question of intent and responsibility remains open, to be weighed by a jury, not by speculation. Outside the Manhattan courthouse, crowds gathered in numbers rarely seen for a criminal case. Supporters waved signs and waited for hours, while news cameras tracked every arrival. Across social media, debate surged, some focused on the healthcare system, others on the meaning of the case itself. Fundraising pages and online commentary multiplied, echoing the public's fascination and anger. Yet none of this, by itself, is evidence. The case before the court rests on physical records, forensic analysis, and sworn testimony. Public feeling, however intense, stands apart from what investigators and prosecutors have documented in the official file. Luigi Mangione stands charged in 2 separate courts, each proceeding on its own track. In the New York State Supreme Court, he faces counts of second-degree murder and criminal possession of a weapon. Prosecutors allege that he planned and carried out the shooting of Bryan Thompson, but Mangione has entered a plea of not guilty to all charges. The state trial is scheduled to begin on September 8, 2026. In federal court, Mangione is charged with interstate stalking resulting in death and 2 firearm-related offenses. The federal trial is set for October 13, 2026. Earlier this year, Judge Margaret Garnett dismissed the federal count that carried the possibility of the death penalty, leaving only charges that could result in life imprisonment. On June 3, 2026, a state court held a hearing on evidence suppression that was sealed at the defense's request. No details of that proceeding have been made public. As of now, the full contents of that hearing and its impact on admissibility remain unknown. Both cases move forward, with key procedural questions still unresolved in the public record. Today, prosecutors present a detailed chain of evidence, yet the law insists on the presumption of innocence until a verdict is reached. For Bryan Thompson's family, loss is absolute. The facts may feel decisive, but only a jury can decide what justice means in this courtroom. Thank you for watching.